It's Fever Fridays. We've got to talk about the Fever blasting officials taking the Eastern Conference Commissioner's Cup title, the relationship between their offense and defense, and their offense on the rise. We'll get to it all on today's Locked On Women's Basketball.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Happy Friday. My name's Tony East. I cover the Indiana Fever for The Next, and welcome to a new thing, Fever Fridays, here on Locked On Women's Basketball, where we talk about the Fever, the latest happenings, about the WNBA team in Indiana having a great season last year, finally rising from the basement of the league and now trudging into a season of expectation. Should be fun. I've covered the Fever since the Wubble, and I'm excited to every week bring you a podcast about this team, their ascent, their popularity, their play on the court, and everything in between. I think I bring some unique perspectives being around for so long, including a 6-win season and everything in between. We'll have guests very frequently in the future. Right now, the NBA Finals are going on, and I also cover the Pacers. So a lot going on in my life, hence the background being very NBA filled, but that will be fixed next week because the NBA will be over by then. But hope you guys enjoy this way we're going to do this every Friday. And I've talked too much about me and what we're going to do every Friday, though you can expect to hear my voice talking Fever hoops. What are we going to talk about today? Because quite the game, the most recent one for the Fever when I'm talking. When this comes out, they'll have played Golden State on the road. No Stephanie White, no DeWanna Bonner for that one. So more kind of questions about the team will be coming from that, and I'll explain what I mean by that in the future. We'll talk a lot about their most recent game for me personally, though, which was that Connecticut Sun game on Tuesday. Scrappy, text, ejections, everything in between. The Fever are blasting the officials post-game, and they clinched the Commissioner's Cup title game, as I combine two words there. So lots to get to there, and I want to talk about where I've seen them improve since I most recently talked about them on my own personal YouTube channel. And you can learn a little bit about what you're going to get from me analysis-wise every week, and we will bring on guests as often as we reasonably can. Let's start looking back at Tuesday. What should have been a nice progress report game for the Fever, right? 88-77 win at home over the Connecticut Sun, a team they should beat. They start a little slow defensively. Their offense kind of sputters late, but they were up so much that, they subbed to their end of reserves in the fourth quarter and 2 dominant quarters in between. They were awesome on defense in the second and third quarter. Measuring stick game in two ways for me. One, their defense looked pretty good. Their defensive rating up to 3rd in the league. They've been awesome stopping the worst of the worst. Connecticut, Chicago, outside of that loss to Connecticut, ironically, their defense has been good against the bottom dwellers. But the reason it's a measuring stick game is they played Connecticut without Cailtin Clark. They lost. They played Connecticut with Cailtin Clark. They kicked their butt. That should be a measuring stick game. There was a lot at stake. If they won and New York beat Atlanta, which did happen, they would have clinched the Commissioner's Cup championship for the Eastern Conference. That happened. We'll get to that. It should have been all sunshine and smiles and rainbows. A good win for the Fever. Look at them making progress, getting stops. Woohoo. And instead, a game marred by controversy and ejections and techs. J.C. Sheldon and Cailtin Clark, they've gone back guarding each other since their Big Ten days. Scrappy duo guarding each other. Love intense battles like that with players guarding each other like that. Face guarding, chasing each other around. You're not getting open on my watch kind of stuff. That's fun. That's fun basketball. To me, Sheldon reaching, trying to get the ball, hits Cailtin Clark in the face. Bad foul. That's going to be called as a hit in the face every time. That's going to lead to a free throw every time. Clark, as you'd expect, didn't like getting hit in the face and kind of gave Sheldon the bump back. So far, I don't think this is anything abnormal for any sort of basketball scenario. Players get hit in the face all the time. Players don't like it. And then Marina Mabrey came in with a hit on Clark, ensuing brouhaha, whatever you want to call it. I think Mabrey should have been ejected right there. I will echo the chorus on that one. That was unnecessary. Clark not even walking towards her, walking perpendicular to her. Just an unnecessary hit. She got booed the rest of the game. And that kind of, the non-ejection there, some of the lack of foul calls is where, among many things, the Fever felt like the officiating did not get control of the game, right? And I wanted clarity on that because not that I don't understand what they're saying, but I don't want to say it in my own words, right? I want to ask Stephanie White and Cailtin Clark, if you heard their press conference after that game, I want them to say what they think the refs not having control of the game is, so that when I talk about it, I can cite their words. And they talked about calling fouls, right? Making sure things don't escalate and emotions don't escalate because of uncalled contact that makes players angry, that loses control of the game, gets things spiraling, right? An emotional player getting fouled and then it not getting called, it's just going to lead to more and more of those kind of things happening throughout the game. That specific instance that I just talked about, which happened in the first half, where Sheldon got Clark in the face, Clark bumps her back, Mabry smokes her. That was, more than what I'm talking about. They needed to get those right. Clark's tech, Sheldon's flagrant, Tina Charles gets a tech, and Mabry gets a tech. I think everybody agreed Mabry should have been ejected for that. Fever get points out of it. But if they from that point on were very strict about the correct calls and made sure nothing got out of hand from there, I think things would have been better, let's say. But they didn't, right? There was a lot of still inconsistencies. Let's say you could see, if you watched the Fever bench during the game, which I had the fortune of being at, you could see anger towards officials at various moments throughout the second half, right? As the Fever, were doing their thing, you'd see moments here or there of why isn't that called? Why isn't that called? And it kept going and going to the point that the frustration eventually boils over. Sheldon keeps guarding the way she is. Clark's guarding the way she is, right? Nothing wrong with intense guarding. But late in the game, Sophie Cunningham, as JC Sheldon's racing towards the rim, wraps her down with a hard foul. What a lot of Fever fans have been hoping for, the enforcer title coming there. Sheldon pops up, Lindsay Allen. They both go right at Cunningham for what they perceive to be too hard of a foul. Just like Mabry, I think Cunningham should have been ejected. She gets the flagrant 2. Out she goes. Alexa Filippo of ESPN reporting. Nothing there for a suspension. Fines obviously coming. But that's what happens when the refs lose control of the game, right? Cunningham was hurt-ish earlier. She got tied up with a Sun player. I didn't see who it was, but I wonder how much that, added to her passion in that exact moment, right? And so Cunningham with a hard foul there. There was less than a minute left in the game. Out she goes. She's done for the night. At that point, more techs, fighting techs, which was an immediate ejection for Sheldon and Lindsay Allen. Their night was over. So 3 ejections in Cunningham, Sheldon, and Allen. 6 techs for many players. Tina Charles got, Clark gets one, just a ton. That's sloppy. That's not what anyone wants to see, right? People want, and that's what Cailtin Clark's frustration was post-game. We're asking her about these plays because they're big plays. They have to be asked about. We want to know what their thoughts are on these big plays. And Clark said that we just won the Commissioner's Cup. You guys are here for basketball. Ask us about the game. And that's true. We should be there to talk about the game. And she played a very, very good basketball game, right? Her games since returning have been wonderful. She was great in this one with 20 and 6. The Fever won her minutes by 31 in a 17-point win, right? She was controlling the game. Her and Lexi Hall on the floor together was just a nightmare for Connecticut. Natasha Howard was very tidy with her play. That was a good Fever performance. And it got completely overshadowed by these plays. And the subtext of it all was Stephanie White postgame saying there's been frustration with the officials league-wide for a while. In league meetings, they've talked about this. You see it around the league, not even just in this game. Connecticut just was in a brouhaha with Chicago a few weeks ago. I don't remember the exact outcome of what that led to for other players, right? It's just how it goes in the W recently that there's been, a lot of commentary about the officiating. And I generally tend to think officials are better than fans do, but I do agree that there's been a lot getting out of hand in the W recently, and that was a very poorly officiated Fever Sun game. The Fever have every right to be upset with how it went, and they responded as such. I might have got the timing wrong. The Clark Mabry dust up might have been in the second half, now that I'm thinking more about it. Regardless of that specific detail from earlier, the Fever think officials need to be better. There's been a lot of stuff like that in the league this year and in Fever games this year. And, people are getting hurt. People are fouling hard. They've got to get control of that. That's what the Fever's messaging was. The officiating needs to be better. And yet, there we go. The fun part. They played a good game, and they won the Commissioner's Cup for the East. They beat New York last weekend, their signature win this season. I think the Fever needed a signature win, and they got it. They played very well in that game. Clark's returned from injury. And then they beat Connecticut. So they beat Connecticut. They beat New York. They beat Washington. I'm missing a game. Chicago, which means they beat everybody in the East in their Commissioner's Cup games except Atlanta. Atlanta beat Indiana. Indiana beat New York. New York beat Atlanta. So there's no head-to-head tiebreakers there because they all beat each other in a circle. So the way the point differential shook out meant that the Fever were on top of that in the end because they finished, Atlanta lost a different game. So Indiana and New York were tied with each other. That three-way tie didn't end up mattering. I'm all over the place with my notes right here. Sorry. But because Indiana beat New York head-to-head, bada bing, bada boom, the Commissioner's Cup winners in the Eastern Conference are the Indiana Fever. Out west, it was the Lynx. The Lynx have the better overall record at the time of the games being decided. So it's Minnesota, Indiana, and it will be played in Minneapolis. That's great for the Fever. They have cash prizes at stake in the Commissioner's Cup title game. That's a big deal, right? That game's always been competitive. Last year's was extremely fun. Minnesota, New York. In New York, I'm looking forward to it. That'll be another measuring stick game for the Fever here in a few weeks. It's July 1st in Minneapolis, and they played great in this Connecticut game, right? I talked about Clark's play, Howard having a good night. Lexi Hall's defense was wonderful. Kelsey Mitchell made up 7 twos, right? Her towards the basket play was quite good. Aaliyah Boston's defense and passing, 5 assists were quite good. Damiris Dantas gave good minutes off the bench, right? A lot of stuff for the Fever to be happy with. Cunningham playing with health again. Colson providing good play, right? No Bonner, and they roll through a Connecticut team. That's a good win for the Fever. Unfortunately marred by 2 becoming the story moments that no one wants to become the story. But on a celebratory night outside of that, and I think that game showed something that has been a bubbling sense of improvement for the Fever, and that is the relationship between their offense and their defense. And it's part of why the Fever are getting better and have a good net rating and are over 500. I want to talk about it, what it means for Clark, the whole starting 5, the whole team, coming up here on Locked On Women's Basketball. But before we talk about that, I want to tell you guys about Car Guru. Shopping for a car should be exciting, not exhausting. But between the confusing prices and hidden fees, it can feel overwhelming. That's why I love Car Gurus. They help you cut through the noise and show you the best deals with full confidence. With over 4 million listings, Car Gurus has more new and used cars than any other major online marketplace in the U.S. They verify dealers, provide real price analysis, and give you the tools and data you need to make the right choice without second-guessing yourself. If you need a deal you can trust, Car Gurus makes it easy to compare vehicles side by side. They have price drop alerts, so you know when the perfect car is available in your budget, and the in-depth vehicle details give you the peace of mind before stepping onto any lot. It's no wonder, similar to what estimated traffic data shows, Car Gurus is the #1 most visited car shopping site. Buy or sell your next car today with Car Gurus at cargurus.com. Go to cargurus.com to make sure your big deal is the best deal. That's cargurus.com, cargurus.com. Back here on Locked On Women's Basketball, thanks for making us your first listen on this lovely Friday. Every single day, multiple shows per day at times, and on weekends, you can find coverage of women's basketball. And at the Next, where you can find my work covering the Fever and the work of many others covering every W team, most college conferences, and the women's basketball landscape in general. It's the best place to get everything. All right, let's keep talking some Fever. Something that I found very revealing and fascinating. Recently, a couple weeks ago, we were talking at practice with players on the Fever, Kelsey Mitchell, Sydney Colson, about their play. You know, they were about 500 at the time. Clark was out, and what they need to get better at and things of that nature. And a first question came about the team's offense, right? And something I'd been talking about on my own personal channel, talking a little bit about some of their games, was on their offense. It felt like at times, you know, they'd run one action and it would go okay, but it'd get shut down and they couldn't get to the next thing. And their offense would die and their possessions were great. And so I asked Kelsey Mitchell about their offense and their flow and what they can be better at to score better. I don't even think their offense has been bad this year, right? In offensive rating, the Fever are 4th. That's pretty good. I think they actually hope they can get higher by the end of the season. Atlanta, Minnesota, New York, the 3 teams ahead of them. I would say that's pretty clearly been the top 4 teams in the league so far on balance. Regardless of my own opinion, Kelsey Mitchell's answer when I asked her about offense was to actually talk about defense, right? And she said, you know, if you guys understand the game of basketball, the relationship between those things, we as the Fever can get better shots for ourselves if our defense is better, right? If the Fever believe, and they're absolutely right, that if they get more stops on the defensive end, if their team defense is better, if their rebounding is better, if they get more steals, whatever way they're obtaining these stops, if they get more stops, they'll be able to be in transition or be cross-matched or just have an easier time scoring on the offensive end. And this was around a time where their defense was having some, you know, substandard, I would say, performances, right? 85 allowed against Connecticut, 90 against New York, 83 against the Mystics. The Dream scored 91, like right before that, like 4 out of 5, like, that's not what they want level of defensive games. So I think part of it was her being like, hey, we got to be better on defense. And the other part of it is that's true. The Fever's offense is better when their defense is good, right? And so Sydney Colson comes up later. And so naturally the next question is, well, if you need to be better on defense to be better on offense, what do you need to do to be better on defense? And Sydney Colson, ironically, does the same thing Kelsey Mitchell did and stretched the defense question to the other side of the floor. When she was asked about, I think this was by me, it might have been someone else, the team's defense, she said, well, it would help our defense if we turn the ball over less, if we take better shots, right? Because then we're not in transition as much on defense. If the other team's taking the ball out of the net, we can get back and set our defense, right? It's easier to defend from a position of advantage. And so don't get me wrong. This is all stuff that I think everybody understands and realizes about the game of basketball, right? And if you had me talk about this without talking to either of those players, I could have explained all this to you in my own words. But I found it very, very interesting that on the same day, one player asked about offense, talks about defense leading to offense, and one player asked about defense, talks about offense leading to better defense. And I think recently, as the Fever have played a little bit better, gotten their first signature win of the season, to me, you could call Atlanta that Atlanta win was good, but by beating New York, and they're showing a lot of their offense-defense synergy of late, right? Better defense in that 77 points allowed game against the Dream. Their offense stunk that night, but great offensive game against New York, great defensive game against Connecticut, great defensive game against Chicago, better defense against the Mystics right before that, right? They've had good defensive games this season, albeit against the worst teams in the league, and that's part of why their defensive rating is good. They've played Chicago and Connecticut twice. Let's be clear about that. But their defense in that Dream game was good. Like, they've shown improvement on that end. And I think as you see the Fever continue to get better this season, you can't see me, but I'm like turning gears with my fingers to show that as they kind of keep turning the gears of improvement, working out who plays with who, how the rotation should look, get healthier, right? They've had Clark and Cunningham back now. They'll get Bonner back at some point, right? She'll be out tonight in Golden State. As they kind of work through all this, I think you'll see the relationship between their offense and their defense really be what takes them from a 6-5 team that's lost some close games to a legitimately like in that top 4 threshold team. And I think this is the hardest part of the Fever season to understand is they're 4th on offense behind those top 3 of New York, Minnesota, and Atlanta, the best 3 teams in the league right now. And they're 3rd in defense behind New York and Minnesota. And they're ahead of Phoenix, Atlanta, Seattle, right? They're top 4 in both. They should be a top 4 team. Their net rating is 4th, right? The net rating suggests they should be a top 4 team. New York first by a mile, Minnesota second. They're well ahead of Atlanta and Indiana. And then Atlanta and Indiana are right by each other. And then another big gap before Seattle, right? So it seems like the top 4 should be pretty set. And yet here the Fever are with the 6th best record and only half a game ahead of the 7th and 8th best records, right? They've got a healthy lead over what I would consider kind of the bottom 5 who have mostly settled themselves out. The Mystics have been better than I think most thought. The Valkyries have been better than I think most thought. But I think some teams could rise from the bottom. Regardless, I think the Fever hope that they can get into that top 4 record-wise. Where currently Phoenix is sitting 3rd at 9-4. Seattle's ahead of them at 7-5. Those are the teams that I think the Fever hope to catch, and their record is misleading in the fact that they're behind them, right? That's their next step as a team is they have the 4th best net rating, and their offense-defense relationship is improving. They've been getting more stuff. Think about the game I just talked about, this Connecticut game that had a million things mar their game. 6 steals and better defense led to a lot of really successful transition play for the Fever in that game. A lot of box score stats that you could pop into and look at to really figure that out. But as you see those steals, you saw how that went. Points off turnovers, the Fever ended that game with 20, right? Fast break points, they won that 11-5, right? They had more points in the paint. They were just doing a good job at things that people would consider the basics of offense to be able to get there and make it happen, right? That was all impressive stuff and shows that exact defense to offense relationship. Think back the game before that. They beat the Liberty. They scored 102 points, right? That's a lot. Clark was on fire. They made 17 threes. However, think about Clark's stretch where she was hooping the 3 threes in less than a minute. And a lot of her games she was hooping, to be clear, but that was like the signature stretch of the game. Transition. They got a lot of those off of stops. And so she's in the open floor and surveying. Even the one where Cunningham like can't find her right away was semi-transition. They're pushing. They're trying to figure it out. She's running to the ball to get it. Right? When they get stops, they get better shots. When they get better shots, they score. When they score, they can set their defense and get more stops. This is a known thing of basketball, the relationship between the two sides of the ball. But part of the reason why I think the Fever are going to take off at some point in the not too distant future, in fact, it might be happening right now as they just beat New York and then thumped Connecticut and have an to difficult schedule coming up, albeit of winnable games. Golden State, the Aces, the Storm, measuring sticks, those Storm and Aces games to me. Their relationship between their play on both ends of the floor, I think, will be the telling part of this road trip, right? If they can continue to use their defense to get better offense and use their offense to get better defense, they will very quickly show that being top 4 on both ends of the floor and a top 3 defense is who they are, and their record will show that. Because right now, they have a lot of close losses, really anchoring their record down, right? 1 point to Atlanta in May, 2 points to New York back in May. They lost that Mystics game and that Sun game back to back where they were close in the fourth quarter of both. Right? That's 4 losses that are like a play here and there changes things. And they did win a close Atlanta game too along the way. But like the expected wins of those close games, they're behind. So if they keep doing what they're doing and keep improving their relationship between offense and defense that Colson and Mitchell laid out for us, I think you'll very quickly see the Fever's record improve. They'll hope to vault into that top 4 record-wise and be among the best teams in the league. And now they're getting healthier. That's also more possible. Let's close out this Fever Fridays on Locked On Women's Basketball talking about the improving offense of the Fever under the look of Cailtin Clark's numbers and a couple more things I want to talk about this team. But before we get into any of that, I want to talk to you guys about Wayfair. There's nothing like stepping into your own outdoor space like you've escaped to a personal oasis. If you are wanting to update your patio this season, Wayfair has made it easy to turn it into a space that feels like yours, comfortable, stylish, and ready for summer. Wayfair has everything you need to level up your outdoor space. Conversation sets, outdoor bars, fire pits, hot tubs, gazebos, and yes, even the perfect string lights. That's what I just got to update the vibe of it. It's like giving your backyard that resort feel without the resort price tag. You can pick up new dining sets, new lounge chairs. I just got new cushions for my Adirondack chairs. Whatever your style leans, modern, comfy, cozy, you can get it all at Wayfair. And free, fast, totally hassle-free delivery, even for larger items, makes it easy for you to host friends or unwind with a book. It feels like your own private retreat in your yard. So don't wait. Make your outdoor space your dream oasis today with Wayfair and enjoy it all summer long. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop a huge outdoor selection. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Back here on Locked On Women's Basketball. Thanks for tuning in every single day and making me your first listen today or second listen. Locked On NBA, lots of chatter going on there with the NBA draft next week, free agency right after. Hop on over there. And of course, check out our coverage of women's basketball at The Next. You can find my stories on the Fever and plenty more in the land of women's basketball over at The Next Hoops. Let's finish this up by talking about the improved offense of the Indiana Fever. They are 4th in offensive rating right now. I think they would like to be higher than that. They're 2 points per 100 possessions behind the Dream and 3.4 behind the Lynx. I think they would hope to be in that Liberty Lynx top 2-3 tier, which is totally attainable for them. With Cailtin Clark on the floor, the Fever's offensive rating, according to PBPstats.com, is 113.7. That would be first in the league. So their offensive rating number is a little misleading in that they missed her for several games, and their offense without her has been not so great this season, which we'll get to in a second. So something I just said last segment I want to bring back up to talk about the Fever's improving offense. This is something I talked about when they were struggling is a harsh word. They were injured, and they have a lot of new players, and they have a new head coach. But when they weren't playing at the level they hoped early in the season is the phrasing I would use. Something I kept talking about was, and I just mentioned this last segment, their offense would start with an action that I thought made sense, and I understood what they were trying to do, but the defense would cut it off, or the timing would be a little off, and they wouldn't get a shot out of it. And that's fine. That happens a lot in basketball. Defense is there to stop exactly that. But then you're supposed to flow into something else, right? Action number 2, whatever that may be. And that's where I felt like the Fever got really off. And that's kind of a symptom of a new team, and that's kind of a symptom of an up-tempo team. There's a lot of reasons for that, but I didn't feel like they could get to thing number 2 very quickly. And so when I was saying that, the interpretation of that is exactly what it sounds like on one hand, right? And this is what I meant in theory. The interpretation is be better at your second actions, right? Keep your offense going and going and going. If you want to be a high-paced team, keep that pace through your whole possession, even when your first action dies. And to be clear, that's still what I meant. I still think they need to be a little bit better at getting from one action to the next. However, the under the surface interpretation of what I'm saying is, hey, if you want to be a better offense and that's your problem, just don't get to your second action. Just score off your first one. Get better at what you're doing. And that is where I feel like the Fever have been better in this recent stretch of good play, where they thumped Connecticut and beat New York and thump the sky and beat a Mystics team that beat them a few weeks before that, right? That's where I noticed them be better, is their first action is leading to a shot that makes sense, right? When they see the double, when they see the defense react, when they see whatever they're trying to have the defense do, they are very quick at recognizing, okay, that means this is open, or we need to get to that, or we need to do this. And it's working very well for those improvements. And so on one hand, I still believe what I said in that they need to get better at getting from action to action. And that's on everybody, right? That sounds like a ball handler thing, but when the ball's moving around or you're sending a bunch of screens, everybody's got to figure out what you want to get to next. However, I think their offense is improving because their first action is yielding better looks as they improve their execution. And that is the natural progression of an improving offense, a team getting better together. And that makes me believe they will eventually be better at getting into their second actions. I mean, think about how many times, if you watch every Fever game, that it feels like they're up against the shot clock, right? Early in the season, it felt not frequent, but a little more often. Now, it doesn't feel nearly as often, right? It's kind of fading away. So that's part one of their improving offense. Part two is Cailtin Clark is back. Holy smokes. 113.7 offensive rating when she's on the floor is bananas. When she is out there, every single player is better. Their offensive rating, to be clear, when Cailtin Clark is not on the floor, is 99.6. Right? That would be the 9th best offense in the WNBA. With her on, it'd be first. We know this. We can watch the Fever. I understand that Cailtin Clark, their identity is the Cailtin Clark strengths. Transition, threes, spacing. That makes sense. She's their best player. They should have an identity based around her. But that is a huge gap. And so missing her, you clearly saw how that hurt their offense when they put up 50 whatever in Atlanta, and they have some other games where their offense is like, that wasn't very good. 70-something in DC. Much better of late with her being healthy. So there's lots of reasons. And Cunningham's back too, another ball handling threat, a good shooter. There's lots of reasons to believe their offense is going to climb. And I think Clark's on-off numbers also, by the way, speak to that what I talked about earlier, that relationship between offense and defense. Clark is a fine team defender, but I don't think anyone thinks of Clark as like some, top whatever defender in the league. But the Fever's defense is better when she's on the floor because they're scoring so much that when she's out there, they're setting their defense. The Fever's 2-point percentage is 2.5 points higher with Clark on the floor. She creates good twos. Her pick and roll gravity makes it easier for everybody inside. Their 3-point percentage goes up 5.3 percentage points with Clark on the floor. Every shot is easier. And yet, because of her injury, they've played more minutes with her off than on this season. That will probably change on this road trip, barring good health. I think because of all these things I've said, all these numbers, you can watch the games and see it. You can dig under the hood and see the numbers and see it. Whatever you want to do, it's very clear the impact Cailtin Clark has, the impact the team's chemistry has, and how they are improving. And that is our first Fever Fridays here on Locked On Women's Basketball. That's where the Fever are. They play Golden State tonight. And then they have a fun next week with lots of games against good to great teams that will be very revealing about the Fever's ascent before they come home to play the Sparks in their final home game before the Commissioner's Cup, which is crazy to say. Thank you all for tuning in today. Hope you enjoyed this. This will be a weekly thing. So let me know what you want to hear in the future. I'll be perusing the comments on YouTube. You can find me on Twitter at Tony Aris, although expect lots of NBA tweets right now because the Pacers, who I also cover, are still playing in the finals, and on Bluesky under the same handle. Thank you for tuning in today to Locked On Women's Basketball. Be back tomorrow with more.